Mickey Cavill, this guy again. Hello and welcome to another episode of With Enough Prep Time. I'm your host, the Nerd Man, and today I'm going to be doing something different because I know a lot of people have watched Black Widow now. I'm going to be doing something different because I know a lot of people have watched Black Widow now. Oops, sorry, I've got some technical problem. Sorry about that, guys. Yeah, so I know a lot of people have watched Black Widow now. So I'm kind of doing, and a lot of people have done a lot of spoiler discussions and talked at volume about whether they like the film, whether they don't like the film, etc. And so I wanted to do a reaction to one of the YouTubers on YouTube who I think speaks for a lot of people or speaks to some of the problems that a lot of people had with this movie. And I've got my own views. Like, I think the movie is pretty damn good. I want to watch it again just to solidify my view here. But yeah, like, again, so this isn't like some kind of beef video with this person. This is just me, Jody's Corner or whatever. This is just me using him and his criticisms as a kind of platform to be able to talk about some of the critiques of this film that I don't understand. And yeah, so that's really it. Apart from that, I know that there's been I've done a couple of reactions to YouTubers at times, and I know I've done reactions against Jody's Corner before, or like discussing something that Jody's Corner has done before, and there have been times where I don't know, something got misunderstood in the translation, and people have talked back to him and thought that I was trying to say, I don't know, start some kind of beef or something like that. And I just think that it's really important, like, as a YouTube community, that we can kind of understand that, hey, just because you disagree with someone, that doesn't mean you're saying you hate them, you dislike them, you wish them some ill will or anything like that. You can just have a disagreement, or use somebody's YouTube content that you perhaps like or tend to have kind of a disagreement with, and use it as a platform to actually share your own ideas about something. So I want to get that kind of straight, like right at the beginning. So hey, how's it going? MSK, what's good? All right, cool. Yeah, that's me. All right. So, hey guys. So yeah, I think I can just start this off and just listen to some of this. I know, like, I started listening to the review, and as soon as I started listening to it, I realized like he had a lot of the critiques that I was hearing about the movie from critics, some critics who don't like it, from some YouTubers who don't like it. And again, I was just like, I want to address like some of these critiques, because just to give you a general idea of my feeling towards this, I think that this is one of the best MCU movies, if not the best MCU movie when you take it all together. Now, does it move or drive the plot of the entire MCU forward in some way? I don't think so. So if that's what people are looking for in this movie, then I think that's perhaps unfair on the film itself, because before the MCU, before these big kind of movie universes, people didn't expect that. People just expected to go and watch a film that was entertaining, that had good character development, that had good plot, a good score, good cinematography, and good action. And that's exactly what Black Widow has. So in those terms, I think it excels as a movie much more than some MCU movies, which are trying to drive the plot of the entire MCU forward, and therefore neglect to actually tell a good story within the film you're watching right then, and neglect to do good character development, neglect to make the film feel like it has stakes, etc., etc. So again, this is me just reacting. I'll see, hopefully this will flare up some kind of ideas as we listen more. I haven't listened to the entire thing, but I did listen to the beginning. So let's see what he has to say.
Technically a good year for a Black Widow movie. What I mean is, bro, I wanted an origin story. I wanted to see the origins of Black Widow. This Black Widow film is not an origin. This Black Widow doesn't delve into her character as much as it should have. This movie isn't even solely about Black Widow. This movie is a lot about the family. This movie is a lot about her sister. And this movie is a lot about the Red Room. The Red Room, which wasn't really talked that much in the MCU, is talked about a lot in this movie. And it's like, okay, I kind of remember that Red Room stuff, but in this movie, it's talked about so much, they expect you to know what the Red Room is and how important and vital it is.
So, I mean, I just want to start off just like right at the beginning here. So he said here that this film isn't like about Natasha, it's about her family. And it's not really an origin story for Natasha. Now, one thing I'll say is like everyone always complains about like having too many origin films. Like, how many they get, people are bored of the origin movie because we've seen it so many times and it's quite formulaic when you think about it. But me, I'm not bored of origin movies. I have no problem with origin movies, but I know that's a complaint that a lot of people have. So it's surprising to me that so many people tend to say, hey, I wish to just skip these origins. We've seen them all before. We know, how the hero becomes the hero. Let's get right into the meat of their story. And that's precisely what this film does. It gets right into the meat of what's important about what made Natasha Natasha. And to tell that story properly, I think you have to have this family involved. And you have to explore things like the Red Room. Now, he said that that's been referenced before, and you need to know about the Red Room prior to watching this movie to really kind of get what it's going on about. I don't think that's true at all. I think this film explains precisely every single part of it is precisely explained without need to have seen previous MCU movies. And I think that's one of the most impressive things it pulls off. Yes, there's some exposition here and there, but in general, exposition in terms of the dialogue where, it seems maybe a little bit unnatural, right? Like suddenly they're like telling their story to a person who should already know the story, right? That happens between the sisters a couple of times where like Natasha starts explaining how she killed Dracov's daughter to her. And you'd think that maybe the sister knew a little bit about this. But nonetheless, even though there's this exposition, it's not very much. It's handled as well as you can do exposition. And then for the most part, you just they show you where Natasha was trained, where she grew up, why this is important to her family, why why it's important to her family, why it's important to her emotional journey as a hero. It explains a lot of the things that were flippantly remarked about previously in the MCU, like having read in her ledger. And suddenly, you can maybe even go back and watch those films after watching Black Widow and get a little bit more and be a little bit more emotionally invested in Black Widow as a character. So I think it did a really, really great job as a send-off to Natasha and explaining why she's been the way why she's been able to have the skills and be the great assassin that she is, but also the emotional journey, those steps in her journey when she's talking to the Hulk, or Dr. Banner about like how she feels herself to be a monster. All of that, when you're watching those films for the first time, you think, hey, what's going on? Why does she feel she's a monster? All of that is explained in this film really well, and it's really done in a kind of way that emotionally invests you in the character. So I don't buy this criticism here that this film isn't about Natasha. Yes, it's got some really good supporting casts who are well fleshed out. They're three-dimensional. They are characters in and of themselves. And that's a good thing. A lot of the time, these comic book movies, they have, a supporting cast who are absolutely paper thin. And the only even potentially two-dimensional character is the hero. So it was nice to see each of the characters, not just Natasha, Red Guardian, the chick that Florence Pugh plays, the mother, the mother of Natasha and Florence Pugh's character. I'm going to bring up the character name, sorry, because that's going to get I need to get the cast names here so that I can refer to who I'm referring to. But all of them are given character arcs, and they're all three-dimensional characters. And that's a good thing. I don't think that's a bad thing for comic book movies. It makes it so Yelena, there's Yelena, and then who was I talking about? Rachel Weisz's character, who is Melina. That each of them has their own character arc. They're well fleshed out, and so it could be seen as distracting to Natasha's story, but I think it amplifies Natasha's story by her being able to play off much more three-dimensional characters than some of the other MCU movies. So let's continue on with this critique.
But I just didn't really feel the importance of this movie. That hurt. This movie, and all MCU movies are not this way. And there's a lot of MCU movies that are kind of this way. This movie was not needed.
I mean, I don't get this as a critique. This movie wasn't needed. Bro, hey, I was going to say, I can invite you in if you don't mind reacting to this with me. I don't mind inviting you in. I just don't know if you wanted to do it or not, but I'll send you the link anyway. And then I'll see if you want to join. All right, yeah. So this movie wasn't needed. I don't. I mean, I don't even know how to really respond to something like that. I mean, it's needed in the sense that people wanted a film about Black Widow. People wanted to see a film about her past and to get some context to some of the statements that she's made in previous movies. And I think this film handles that pretty damn well. So again, I don't know what is meant by this movie wasn't needed. So I'll carry on.
Because it's not the movie's not needed because it's a Black Widow movie. No.
Okay.
This movie wasn't needed because of the story he was telling. You telling me stories about the old Red Room that we done got past already. I want to be able to see her come up and train. I wanted to see the answer, in Endgame. Natasha, daughter of Ivan. He knows your father. I didn't know my dad's name. I wanted those answers. I wanted to see Ivan. I wanted to see his mom. We still have questions that we had. Who are your mama? Who your daddy? Where you from? What was life like?
Well, it did on the question of who her mother was and who her dad. See, the thing is about this critique is the opposite could be said. All right, so there are questions that maybe weren't answered about Natasha in this movie, like who her dad and mom was. One, perhaps you can deal with that in future movies through Yelena's character. But secondly, if they hadn't have shown the Red Room, if they hadn't have shown all the things that you do find in the movie about the family, about that she grew up in, how she why she was so tortured by her past. If they hadn't have shown that, he probably would have been doing a video saying, "Oh, they showed her dad and their mom and all the unimportant stuff, but they didn't show the red room, and they didn't show they didn't show uh, they didn't show Dracov's daughter, and they didn't show you blowing up, her blowing up Dracov's daughter." And all of those answers would have been, all of those things would have been unanswered, and you'd have an equal complaint about that. So they had to focus on some part of her life in the past. And I think the part of her life that they focused on in the past is a good part. It's like that's the part, like the family with the Red Guardian, the stuff with the Red Room, the girls going missing all over the world. I think it's a very organically told story. It leads kind of naturally from what we know from Black Widow already. It's not like they just suddenly brought some, stuff out of folklore and then just put it in this movie. Everything that she's mentioned in the movies, a lot of that is addressed in this film. So he's just saying, "Hey, don't address this part, address that part." And I don't know if that's a legitimate criticism. This guy is speaking the truth, Nerdman. Clearly, your left-wing feminist biases have gotten in the way of your ability to be objective. All right. Yeah, okay, good. Thank you, Film Elite. Hey, bro. So, let's go on to this.
And then when you figure out the family that you kind of thought that was real, wasn't. The Red Guardian, he was a great character.
Okay.
For laughs. He was funny. He wasn't really a good fighter. He had strength, but his action scenes were trash. Then you had the mom character. She was okay.
I agree with that.
Hey, forgettable. It was a little double agent type of role thing going on there that I was like, okay, that's cool, little, trick me type of thing, all right, that was cool. But overall, she wasn't that great of a character. Florence Pugh, her sister, not really.
I wouldn't agree with that about Milena, but hey, everyone's got a subjective point of opinion. I thought Rachel Weisz did really well in the role. I think that she demonstrated like that sense of being like a scientist, but also like she's also a mother, so she's kind of caught between her duties of being a scientist to this secret organization of spy girls. And she's definitely dedicated to that, but she's torn between that and knowing what these girls, knowing what Yelena and Natasha went through, because she'd been through that Red Room 4 times and been conditioned, herself. And I think what's missing here about this kind of family dynamic here is that they're nonetheless, all of them, especially the little girls like or Natasha and Yelena, they want this family to be real. And to some extent, everyone in that family wants it to be real. They did form a bond, they did care about each other, but at the same time, they're also bound by duty, or or they've come to the realization that, hey, this was fake, and they're torn between those two realities. And I think that's done really well. And Rachel Weisz plays it very, very well and close to the edge, where you don't know what side she's on until the twist ending, where she's clearly helping her adoptive family as such. So I think they did that really well. I mean, again, it's very subjective if a character's memorable to you or not, but I found her quite memorable. I thought each one of the main 4 of their family So David Harbour, Rachel Weisz, Florence Pugh, and Scarlett Johansson had incredible chemistry together, and showed like throughout the movie that just a great dynamic of like them. It was just a great dynamic of, as I said, being torn between, wanting to be part of a family and wanting to have this kind of image of the family that they were before, but at the same time, being torn, like for instance, the Red Guardian is torn because he wants his glory days back, and he wanted to pretend that he was bored by this family, and he wasn't invested in this family, but really he actually was. And he is proud of his daughters, even though they're not really his daughters. He is kind of proud of bringing them up. So he's torn between those two things. So I think they did well with all of that.
Your sister, Red Guardian, not really her dad. And old girl wasn't her mama. It's a fake family. They've known each other maybe, I want to be sure, 3 years. It was a 3-year mission that they were on in America. So y'all were only a family for 3 years, and you selling this movie as y'all family, y'all about to get together. It was dysfunctional. It didn't really feel like a family. The only thing that felt family oriented was the love that she shared between her and her sister. That felt real because the baby sister, Florence Pugh, really wanted that to be real. So I'm like, all right, cool. The purpose of this movie is what kind of gets me feeling uneasy.
He's got a good point there. I didn't really think about that mission was only 3 years, and yet they had such a bond, even though like for many, many more years they'd grown up apart. So that's a fair point that he's making there. But they still pulled it off pretty well through their acting.
I feel like after watching this movie, the purpose of this movie is to just usher out Black Widow and replace her with Florence Pugh. She's the new Black Widow. I feel like that's the only reason why we got this movie. Not because Scarlett Johansson deserves a farewell send-off like Robert Downey Jr. did. Not because that her character was so loved, beloved, and important. I don't think so. I believe they did this strictly to push the new Black Widow. And in my opinion, it's disrespectful to the character Black Widow.
Again, I mean, I don't know. Like, again, I don't know what movie like certain people saw, because this has been a big criticism of this movie, which is that, hey, this movie isn't really a Black Widow movie. It's a setup for a new for Florence Pugh, a new Black Widow. Now, yes, certainly it might be, but at the same time, a lot of this is driven by the emotion that is the emotional journey of Natasha, her dealing with killing Dreykov's daughter, her confronting her guilt about her past, her taking on the more noble hero, or accepting that more noble heroic aspect of herself. All of that drives this narrative. She is the heartbeat of this narrative. And yes, again, the film does have 3-dimensional characters that are, that are bouncing off her. And that's a good thing. And of course, the main one of those is Florence Pugh's character, Yelena. And she's bouncing off her. And she's 3-dimensional, and she has a journey. She has an arc in this story. And that is a good thing for another character to have their own separate emotional journey and arc. And it's a beautiful one, done really well. And, the scenes between David Harbour, like the Red Guardian, and Yelena are really fantastic. And there's a moment when he sings her a song that is just so well done, and it's so emotional, and it moved me a lot. So yes, she's a good character, but you can't complain that by having another good character in a Black Widow movie, that's disrespectful to Black Widow. I don't think so. I think what's respectful to Black Widow is to give her the best movie you possibly can out of her story. And that's what they did. And they gave her a lot to do. In the end, she was the hero. She was the one who saved the day. Most of the great action scene, or the good action scenes, there's some problems with the action scenes, I have to admit. watching it a second time. But most of the action and the person who's getting stuff done in the end, it is it is Black Widow, it is Natasha. She's the one who has those hero moments. So I don't think it's disrespectful to her at all. And I don't think the purpose of this was just some cynical kind of thing to introduce a new Black Widow. Maybe it was to expand that part of the MCU universe so that you understood it more and it's more compelling. So now you can add Black Widows into the mix of things in the MCU as the assassins taking down regimes. Maybe you never know every time you see like a certain female character in future movies, you might not know, like, hey, she's actually a Black Widow, So I think all of that stuff, I wouldn't say it's at all. I'm kind of curious what other people think, but I wouldn't say that this is, this isn't Natasha's movie at all. I think it's very, very much Natasha's movie, and she goes through an emotional journey, an emotional arc that is satisfying in and of itself, and that's what you'd expect from a Black Widow movie. I don't think you have to have every character be just not that, not explore other characters in depth, just so that you can focus completely on Black Widow. I think you need to look at multiple characters in depth. And the other thing I'll say about this criticism is, like, I think a lot of this comes down to MCU fans. Let me not say MCU fans. I'll say some MCU fans equate having a humorous character or having the jokes, having the funny bits as being the better character. And Florence Pugh is the one who is the funnier character out of Natasha and her. She's the cooler, funnier. She has the the sassy lines, the sassy, memorable bits. But again, just because she's funnier and she's likable doesn't mean Natasha being the more serious and the more stern and the more kind of heroic, she's just the straight up heroic character. That doesn't take anything away from that. I think she doesn't need to be joking all the time, for you to appreciate her as a character. Maybe that's just not in her way of being, right? That's Yelena's character. She's the one who likes to make jokes. She's the one who likes to make light of things. Natasha doesn't. That doesn't make her a better character. Maybe she's got a few flashier lines, a few flashier bits, but still the main core of the emotional journey, I think, is Natasha in this, when you look at it.
It's disrespectful to Scarlett Johansson. I feel like this movie lacked complete emotion. There was no emotion in this movie. I expected to cry. There it is. My expectations getting the better of me. I wanted to feel her pain, her lack of family. I wanted to feel her have a family. And I really don't feel like I got that outside of a sister bond. The action in this movie is rather lackluster. There's a couple of scenes in here that were actually nice to see. The car chase.
Again, I don't know what film. This is one of the best parts of Black Widow was she didn't joke all the time like the other corny MCU heroes. Not excited for Yelena, the one-liner machine. I think that she's really good at doing the one-liners, Yelena. So I see what you're saying. It could get tiresome, but in this movie, it wasn't tiresome. I want to see it so bad, but I don't want to go by myself. LOL. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. And you're not paying $30 to watch at your house. Okay. Um, what were we talking about? Like, oh, the action. The action's really good in this movie. I mean, there's a bit of stuff where I, I don't know exactly if Black Widow is gonna in future they're gonna show she just has powers. Maybe she was a mutant all along. But she does some stuff in here like I'm like, hey, you can't survive that. So uh, you might want to look out for that stuff. But in general, I think this action is some of the best action in the MCU. It really is. I think there's big, bombastic set pieces that remind me of something like Mission Impossible, but like the good Mission Impossible. So yeah, I don't know. I can't. I'm not really, or the Bourne movies as well. So I'm not really buying that the action wasn't there. And again, emotional. I think it was emotional. I think the scene where Florence Pugh breaks down because she's the only. By the way, this is spoilers, so blasted. So if you haven't seen it and you don't mind spoilers, and anybody else who's watching this is spoilers. So if you see the scene with Florence Pugh where she breaks down at the dinner table with her family, because she's the only one, because Natasha knew that they were a fake family on a mission from the USSR, and obviously the parents knew, but Florence Pugh's character didn't know that she was just a fake family planted there by the USSR. So when she breaks down at the table saying she thought it was real, I thought that was so well performed. It was so emotional. And then, adding to that, when she then goes on to have her father sing the song her favorite song from her childhood, absolutely beautiful. And it's beautifully executed because even if you watch in the beginning when they're first singing, when they're children, and she's singing that song in the car, you see that David Harbour's character is miming with his lips. So, the payoffs in this emotionally are very strong. And as for Black Widow, I think there were moments of just triumph with her. I don't know if I ever wanted to cry or anything like that, but there were triumphant moments where she did things that were badass and heroic. So maybe he's right that for Black Widow herself, I never got that real emotional scene or that callback to her dying in Endgame. But I don't think I needed that. You can feel those emotions from Endgame. You don't need to repeat try and artificially recreate that emotion that you probably felt in Endgame when she died. You don't need to try and recreate that here. What they did is they did something new, and they gave her a backstory that finally fleshed out Black Widow. So now she's one of my favorite characters, and I actually wish she was alive after this movie because I want to see more Black Widow movies. They're badass. I think they're really badass action thrillers, and it does something new in the MCU. It's a little bit darker, a little bit grittier than usual. None of the kiddie humor as well.
The scene was decent. Flying through the sky at the end of the movie, as ridiculous as that is, and as ridiculous as it looks, her just jumping off of a cliff to fly, she's a full-on superhero. You would think that she could just fly off like Superman.
True.
That's where it was at.
True.
But I was cool with that. That's superhero shit. I'm with that. I like that scene. But within the context of that whole third act, the third act was messy. The third act did not live up to expectation. The third act did have tension that I like, though. I feel like the third act of a Black Widow film should be highly emotional. And if you're not going to go for high emotion, you better go for a big spectacle action set piece following suit of the ground characters like Black Panther, Winter Soldier, Civil War. Those have really big, large third act explosions of action or emotion. This had neither. The best part of the third act was her confronting the man who was supposedly dead. Now,
which is good.
here's something in the plot of the film that I don't really get with. Y'all can help me out. You mean to tell me they be looking for this red room and that shit been floating up in the sky for how many mother freaking years? What the freak was that? How many years was this? You just a random birds flying, random jets going by.
Hey, when he's telling the truth, he's telling the truth. It's a good point.
This sheep. Okay. That's a little messy to me. She couldn't physically kill him because he was releasing pheromones that stopped her from stabbing him. All right, I'll take it. I called the thank you for your cooperation. I called that in the theater. That was nice. She breaks her nose so the pheromone blockage stops so she could beat him up. Okay. You have all these female widows who are lost in this gas, this poison that is able to neuralize them from Men in Black, undo the deneuralizer, give them their memories back. So now the world is full of Black Widows out there. It don't have to be Florence Pugh. There's a whole soldier of Black Widows out there across the world right now. And I've been there since 2016. I feel like Scarlett Johansson's character was not the focal point of this movie. I feel like Black Widow wasn't truly the sole focal point of this movie. She shared the shine with a lot of other people. Do I not like that? I do not. This movie should have been solely about her, the character, her family, from her point of view, not the family's point of view, right? You show me Red Guardian's point of view. You show me the mom. You show me the sister. No. This should have been experiences that Black Widow had with each individual member of it. We got Black Widow and her sister, the sister and the mom and the dad and the mom and the sister. No. Should have been strictly from the point of view of Black Widow to see how she identifies and relates to each one of these people. And then do something dramatic to or something hopeful. I'll take anything. I wanted some feeling in this. But what I got was a semi-decent action movie. Black Widow is a semi-decent, middle of the trough, slightly above average action movie, and it just added Black Widow in it. All in all, this movie was made, and it was just said, it's almost as if she didn't die in the MCU. None of the attention was paid on her sacrifice or even hinted at her sacrifice in Endgame. Why? Why not? The end credit scene showed her gravestone. That was nice. She threw the whistle up. That was nice. Wasn't enough. And at the end credit scene was the biggest slap in the face to me. You got Elaine Bennis, Julia Louis-Dreyfus there.
This bit, I think fair enough. I mean, I think it's fair enough you can feel that. But I wanted to go on to one bit that he talks about, because this is all like, sure, okay, they didn't do a callback to Endgame. He felt that they could have focused more on her perspective, on how she looks at her on how she feels about her family. Sure, I mean, that's one way you could have done it. They did it another way, but I think the way they did it was just as entertaining, and that's what I want from a film, for it to be entertaining to at least in this genre, like to be entertaining and to be emotional and maybe funny, or maybe, action packed, or whatever it may be. So, in this sense, I don't necessarily disagree or agree with him on this. But there is one thing I want to get to, which is a main criticism that people have been saying, and I want to talk about it. So hopefully you'll get to it in just here.
There on her female Nick Fury shield sheet, she works for, I forgot the agency's name. You know the agency's name? I forgot the agency's name.
I forgot the name of it too.
And I'm sitting back and I'm like, okay. But then she shows this picture. Here's the man responsible for your sister's death. And you show Hawkeye? Are you freaking kidding me? So this is what we're doing, Feige. Not only in this movie, hey, men are dumb in this movie. Men are the bad guys in this movie. Red Guardian is a freaking idiot. Is that intentional? Yes, it is. Red Guardian had a fight scene with Taskmaster, and they didn't even show the fight. They cut away to Black Widow or some other shit. They would cut back and show a couple of punches and cut away again. They really didn't want to show the masculinity of the Red Guardian outside of the prison scene with him doing arm wrestling. He was an idiot buffoon. And I'll say this: the casting for the bad guy that controlled the widows, fantastic. He was a riveting villain. I'll say this: he's a great actor, by the way. He had such a menacing feel to him, his aura, his presence, the way he spoke. I felt the tension in that dialogue between Natasha and the guy with the ring. I really felt that. So he was good. But that's the bad guy at the end? That's the ultimate climax? This guy in a suit? Oh no. That don't work for me. It really doesn't. Third act was lacking. The middle of the movie was long, guys. For a movie to be 2.5 hours, it felt like this movie should have been 30 minutes shorter.
He's definitely right about like the Red Guardian not getting a proper action scene at the end and them cutting away. That movie was amazing. Best Marvel flick yet. I agree. Nerdettes Newsstand. I absolutely 100% agree. I was gonna say like it's not a flawless movie, and he's pointed out a flaw in the movie, which is Red Guardian. I didn't mind him being a buffoon because it was funny and it was really well done. And he was a buffoon, but he was a complex character as well, because this is a guy who has, a complete fantasy about his glory days and the legend of the Red Guardian, so much so that he's created some artificial rivalry between himself and Captain America. And boiling underneath all of that vanity is his pride in raising these strong daughters. And he believes that he's done them some kind of service. And he wants to be, in some sense, a father figure to them, but again, driven by his own narcissism. So it's a very complicated and interesting character. But, given all of that stuff, he needed a fight scene against Taskmaster, possibly with Black Widow going back and forth. And the fact that Taskmaster, you never get to see Taskmaster really use his powers of like copying fighting styles. Like it suggests that he's copied Black Panther's fighting style at one moment, and they cut, right? So the fact that Taskmaster never gets to show off that ability for a sustained amount of time, I think is a problem with the movie. Maybe they can fix that in future because the Taskmaster is still around. Same with Guardian. I'm just like, Guardian needed a fight scene against this guy. He came in and he had such a strong introduction, and you're thinking, hey, this guy's powerful and he's strong as shit. What can he actually do? And you never get to see him do that. And what ultimately happens is he serves as a clown for the story. And I agree to that extent, but he's still an interesting character in and of itself. Very funny and played very well by David Harbour, like brilliantly well by him. So I agree with all that. And then hopefully we'll come to this last criticism and then I'm gonna leave it there.
With the story it told, I will take a 3-hour Black Widow movie if you telling the right story. If you talking about her family, her history, and doing the character development, using the emotion and all that stuff like that, doing some amazing action, I'll take a 3-hour Black Widow movie. But the story that they're pitching here didn't need to be 2.5 hours. This story that they pitched in this movie could have been 1 hour and 40 minutes. And
the time flew by for me. I don't know. Like, it was a very tightly kind of woven kind of movie. So I don't think there wasn't too much, excess. I didn't feel myself like going, oh God, this is too long at all.
Would have been cleaner. Second act of this movie was a little bit boring. A lot of dialogue, a lot of transition into different places, not really much going on. It was a little bit dull. The opening of the movie was interesting because you're excited to be there. They're doing little ties in. She meets the sister. You're kind of there. Second act and the third act really dipped for me. Third act had a heightening moment, and it was doing this in the third act. Overall, the third act was not good, in my opinion. Like I said, the Red Guardian was dumb. The bad guy was evil as shit. And the bad guy's evil plan is what really slapped me in the face, too. I'm going to come back to Hawkeye in a minute. The bad guy's ultimate evil plan was to use the widows to take down governments, whatever he wanted, and then by the end of it, wipe all of the women out, all of the little girls. His ultimate plan was to control empires and make them fall, and then eliminate women, little girls. There's too many women in this world. His plot was on some evil Thanos shit. We have too many women. We need to chop their population down. Are you freaking kidding me?
This is what this is what I wanted to get to, and this is the bit where I was like, I have to kind of comment on this. I don't know what happens sometimes when people watch these films, but where did this plot come from? As far as I knew, all he wanted to do, this bad guy, is use women like little girls, and it's dastardly. It's really evil as a plan. It's, for once, I really felt like I hate this fucking bad guy, and I don't feel that a lot in the MCU. I think this is one of a really, really good MCU villain is Dreykov. He's literally like a trafficker of little girls, right? And so he's picking up little girls. He's taking them through this training course to become assassins. And then if they can't make it, then they are killed. But he's not trying to cut off the population of little girls or of women. That's nothing in this film says that. He's literally trying to use girls as a resource to be assassins so that he can take over different countries, topple countries, do coups, do whatever. And he's showing how sophisticated he's got at this method to Black Widow. And that's it. So I have no idea what, it's so funny that I don't know what it is. Like, again, I think people sometimes are imposing, because people are fearful of maybe agendas in these films, that they're imposing further narratives onto the film that just aren't there. And sometimes, these films do have like slight agendas, but it's for us to be mentally strong enough to resist those agendas and not to fall for them if we don't believe in the message of those agendas. I don't think it's necessary to I don't know. But in any case, like this criticism here, I just find it's mind-boggling to me, because I'm just like, I don't know at what point in the film. I'd love to sit with them and show at what point in the film did you see this, because I didn't see it. But this is the last one. I hope this finally comes to the point that I wanted to get to here.
You have a bad evil man whose ultimate plan was to kill women. If that ain't the most SJW shit I done heard in the last 3 months.
See, again, you're using your own, again, it's an ideology that it's imposing like one's own ideology onto critiquing the film. I mean, it doesn't matter what the ideology of the filmmaker is. What matters is how good the film is and how good they are able to represent that said ideology. Like, I can watch a film that I'm completely against the message of the film, or not get completely against the message, but like the message of the film doesn't chime with what I believe, like, say, politically or sociologically, right? It's saying something alternative to what I believe. But I can look at that film and say, hey, it's a really good film for what it's trying to achieve and the message that it's trying to send, right? It tells that message quite well. And Black Widow, for whatever you want to say, maybe it's like a female empowerment thing, with this man who's like, trafficking girls all over the world, which does happen, by the way. So it's not like the writers are coming out of this out of nowhere, but they're using like a superhero story as an analogy for something that's actually happening in the real world. So, they say, like, the film is saying that's terrible. That's a bad thing that's happening in the world. I think that's absolutely, I think that's absolutely fine to say, like, hey, like, trafficking women to be used as whatever kind of resource for men, that's not a good thing. And it happens in the world, and the film is suggesting that that's a bad thing. But if you're trying to say, like, oh, that all of Hollywood is doing this at the moment and you don't like that, that's fine. But how does this film actually show that? And this film shows it in a way that it's not heavy-handed, it's not preachy, it's just a badass spy thriller, and this is the villain's plan. And you had to have known that, because that was something that was in the MCU for a long while, that the Black Widows are a bunch of women that are turned into assassins by an evil organization. That's been in the MCU prior to this film. So the filmmakers just took that and expanded on what that actually was. So my biggest gripe was the poor adaptation of Taskmaster. Taskmaster was mute the whole time. Yeah. So let's go back into this. I hope it comes onto Taskmaster.
Jody Diamond!
Oh, here we go.
It's time to do some more Jody Diamonds. Because what did I say for the last few months? I said, you know what? I've been looking at these trailers. I've been hearing about the writers of these movies and stuff that they was involved with. I'm about to blow your mind, Just Us League. They said, what up, Jody? What you gonna say? I said, nigga, you ready? Taskmaster's a woman.
All right.
No,
here's where I mean, again, like, I think pretty much everyone had this, was suspected this was the case, that Taskmaster could be a woman. So I'm sure it's very impressive that he predicted this first, even though I think everybody apparently knew this, but that's fine. He predicted it. What's the problem with that? That's what I don't understand. The film, again, it's this imposing of, some kind of political, you say that, and I'm not talking to Jody. I'm not talking about Jody on this. I'm talking about people who share this kind of view. It's that there's a political agenda that you're saying these movies have, and you don't like it for that, but you're criticizing these movies using your own political agenda, which is like, oh, hey, we're really worried about, I don't know what people are they worried that men are going to be pushed out of roles in Hollywood, or there's not, I don't know. But in any case, sometimes agendas are done badly. Sometimes they push like heavy-handed themes, whether it's feminism or other kind of things, and it's done unnaturally, and it's done to the detriment of the story. In this case, it is not done to the detriment of the story. It exactly, it adds a personal, a personal reason for Black Widow to want to. So there's a personal reason for the conflict between Taskmaster and Black Widow here at the end, and a personal reason for her want to save the villain rather than just kill the villain or beat the villain up. And I think that's really, really good. Like, she doesn't want to just, let's just kill the villain. She wants to save the villain for once. It's kind of like what Wonder Woman 1984 tried to do, but failed spectacularly at. It's like a hero who's actually trying to save their villain rather than just destroy them. And so uh, this personal conflict that they have between the personal conflict that Natasha has with Taskmaster would be much better than it just being a male or a man for the sake of being a man. And the fact is, we already knew it was Dreykov's daughter who got blown up in previous movies before. Now, if they hadn't have said Dreykov's daughter in films that in the MCU in the past, then I could say, hey, maybe this is an agenda. Why couldn't they just have turned it into Dreykov's son, and then it would have been, But again, the theme of the whole film, right, of all of these widows, of women being, chemically subjugated, so as to become, these elite assassins. That theme of the whole film plays in much better that the most elite assassin, Taskmaster, that this guy has under his control would be a woman. So I don't see any problem with this whatsoever. I think sometimes they do gender swaps and it doesn't work. Sometimes they do race swaps and it doesn't work. This is a situation, a prime example of where it works. Taskmaster is an iconic character. In many ways, I know in the comics a lot of people know him, but in mainstream, there's not that level of him being so iconic, and there's nothing about the character, as I can see, unless maybe somebody can correct me about the comics, that I can see that necessitates that Taskmaster be black, white, Asian, woman, man, any of those things. And I think they gave a really good, compelling backstory to Taskmaster. I just wish Taskmaster had better action. That was the thing that was missing. She was scary. She was very fearsome. She built a lot of tension, but unfortunately, because they had her against Natasha, who seemed to be invulnerable to any kind of damage, it took away some of the tension of when Taskmaster was chasing her and the sister. And then lastly, I think the other thing that's really important in Taskmaster is we didn't really get to see that power of her mimicking other people's fighting abilities and then fighting people, using those different abilities. So that was my main thing that I wanted to get to in this review, of where I was like, wait a second, what's going on with this critique here? So I'm going to listen to the end of this point just to see if there's anything more he brings up that I want to respond to. But other than that, I think I'll leave it there.
They'll never do that, Jody. No, they ain't gonna make her no woman. That's disrespectful. I said, watch. It's gonna be a woman. Can't no man be fired like it's gonna be a woman. Gender swap. Jody Diamonds. I'm good with this shit. But they put a man body so they would trick us.
Yeah.
They had a whole man stunt guy, but then when the time come, woman body. And that reveal was weak. It was the daughter of the man.
Yeah, that was whack.
At first I was like, is that your mom? No, it's not your mom. It's the daughter of the man that you blew up.
Yeah, I thought
her face was melted.
Yeah, how they made it look like that it was his son or something like that at first, like he was
it was dumb.
Yeah.
It was dumb. So back on it. So Red Guardian, bad guy, Hawkeye. You said that she's pitching, this is the one that killed Black Widow. This is the one that killed your sister. So now you're going to try to put Florence Pugh to hunt down Hawkeye? Motherfucking Hawkeye is the motherfucking man out here, bro. He loved freaking Natasha. They were best friends. And you going to disrespect the character Hawkeye by trying to make her sister come for him? Are you kidding me? You going to make the...
I don't know why that's disrespectful. I'm kind of curious as to why that is disrespectful to Hawkeye. It's just a setup for a conflict where she doesn't know. I think the thing is stupid, actually, because the problem is it's not disrespectful to Hawkeye. It just doesn't make sense. How does this woman know that? How does she know that Hawkeye what happened between Hawkeye and Black Widow? That she doesn't know exactly what happened there, and that she had to sacrifice herself. And even if she does know, surely Florence Pugh would have been like, hey, what happened to my sister? And found out that, she died on this planet, like when Hawkeye was around. I mean, surely she would have been looking in and trying to investigate, since she cares enough to go to her sister's gravesite. She would have been investigating this. So that to me makes little to no sense. But I think it's just a setup to have a good action, like a good conflict between two very equally matched, people, basically Hawkeye and Yelena. Like, you've seen Yelena in this movie, you've seen how badass she is, you've seen Hawkeye in past and how badass he is. Why not get them to have a little conflict over the fact that he may or may not have killed her sister? So I think, yeah, that's really, as far as it goes. I don't really, again, I say this like this is not like some beef video. It was just that I was watching this and I saw it and I thought, this is a good way to remind me of all the criticisms I'm hearing of this movie that I think are unfair to the movie. So I wanted to kind of respond to it in those terms. But yeah, I don't have much more to say about it. The rest of the spoiler review you can watch yourself, but this kind of been my spoiler review. I think the movie is excellent. I give it an 8 out of 10. I do think that it's still, to me, I think it's still, to me, not, what was I going to say? I just got kind of taken off track. But I think it's still, to me, one of the better MCU movies. It's right up there. I do think it's better than Winter Soldier in a lot of ways, just as a whole kind of movie. There's none of the humor seems unnatural. It's got a much more darker sensibility, darker humor, more fleshed out characters, a great send off to Black Widow, and some kind of quite spectacular action scenes that I don't think most people will be disappointed with. Is it one of the greatest comic book movies of all time? I think it might be up there in the top 20. So, I think it's very, very good. But apart from that, yeah, I'm going to leave it at that. Do subscribe, comment, obviously give me a high five, smash the like button. And yeah, I guess give me some good, let me know what you think of the film. Let me know if you see any flaws that were in the film itself. And I will leave it pretty much at that. I'll see you on the flip side. Love you 3000. Peace.